Hello to all you retro gaming fans out there, and welcome to another installment of Take It or Leave It. It's been quite a while since we've last dived into Crash Bandicoot, now has it? I just wanted to give this channel a bit more variety with the games that I review. But now that we're back with Crash, let's continue our journey with him for a little bit. Last time when we looked at the Crash franchise, we covered Crash Bandicoot 2. Spoiler alert, Crash Bandicoot 2 is absolutely amazing and improves on everything from the first game. Except for the bosses, those are just as hit and miss as they were in the first one. So it will be interesting to find out whether or not Naughty Dog are going to be able to replicate that same bar of quality from last time. Before we do that though, we need to look at the development history first, as usual. Naughty Dog had a lot to live up to after the success of Crash 2. This time they wanted to make Crash 3, well, what most developers want to do in the third installment. Make it bigger and better. They created 3 new engines for entirely new gameplay styles. With the same budget as Crash 2 and 10.5 months to make the game, Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped was released on November 3rd, 1998.
Crash 3 is where we see some debate in the Crash fandom. Some say that 2 is better, others say that 3 is better. I'd say that Crash 2 wins that overall though, given how I've seen a lot more people say that 2 is the best. But I still see a handful of people say that 3 is their favorite. Which side am I on? Be patient. There's really not much else to say on Crash 3's development history anyway. Buckle up as we go to the Time Twister and take a look at Crash Bandicoot 3. What?
Sony Computer Entertainment America presents a Universal Interactive Studios production. A game created and developed by Naughty Dog. Crash Bandicoot Warped. Press start to begin.
Crash Bandicoot 3 takes place right after the 100% completion ending from Crash 2. After destroying the Cortex Vortex, the remains crash into Earth and just so happen to crash on the exact spot that a new villain happens to be held in. Uka Uka, Aku Aku's twin brother. Oh yeah, Aku Aku actually talks now instead of him just being a health system and going,
What have I got?
I mean, sure, we are more than used to Aku Aku being a fully established character now, but at the time, this would have been really fucking cool to see, and can even emphasize that this time, we have higher stakes.
Aku Aku locked up Uka Uka in a temple to protect the world. As it turns out, Cortex, you know, the main villain from 1 and 2, was being controlled by Uka Uka the whole time. Which means that the world domination plan from 1 and 2 wasn't just Cortex's doing, it was also Uka Uka's. Now that Uka Uka is free, the world is in danger again. Uka Uka confronts Cortex about his failures with Crash and decides to take this seriously. Uka Uka gets Dr. Nefarious Tropy to help him to travel back in time and retrieve crystals to try and take over the world again. Meanwhile, Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco about what they're dealing with, and after a little information on Uka Uka, off they go. And somehow manage to get to the Time Twister. Huh.
How the hell did they manage to find the... You know what? Stop questioning this.
After a very brief tutorial on how to enter levels, we're off. It's time to conquer Cortex's and Uka Uka's plans on taking over the world, and along the way, they taunt you with these vortex messages. I really love these scenes, by the way. And we have to shut down the Time Twister machine before it's too late.
Crash 3's story is really good, actually. I mean, sure, it ain't perfect, but it's a definite improvement over Crash 2's story, and is so far the best story that we've seen on the show yet.
Don't get me wrong, the way that the gang just shows up at the Time Twister is stupid, but that's really all that I can say that's fundamentally wrong with the story. The best part about it by far is Uka Uka. Cortex was already a pretty good villain as is, so having someone to be revealed that they've been controlling him the whole time already establishes their threat. As well as Uka Uka's introduction being absolutely perfect. No other words, it's perfect. From the moment he flies out of his prison saying,
Free at last.
to the scene where he is telling Cortex off. This scene right here is easily one of my favorite moments from the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Uka Uka and Entropy's creepy silhouettes, the tense music, the voice acting, and for the cherry on top, Entropy slowly walking over to them as Uka Uka explains his plan and has the scene fade out as the camera zooms in on Entropy's face. It's total perfection and is why this story works so well. Also, the whole idea of the villains going back in time gives the overall story higher stakes, as well as the brand new characters being just as great as the old ones. Entropy is intimidating, well voice acted, has a great design, and is overall pretty cool. Dingodile is also insanely cool. He's a dingo and yet a crocodile. Crocodiles are fucking cool, what else am I supposed to say? Crash 3's story is really damn good. It ain't deep or anything, but does exactly what it sets out to do, and the reveal of Uka Uka and having it revolve around time travel gives it a sense of finality. It gives you the impression that this is the final Crash game, which, in a way, it kinda is. Crash 3 has the exact same control style as 2, including all of the moves involving the circle/R1 button.
So yay! Crash 2 controlled really good, so that means that Crash 3's controls are just as good, right? Well...
Unfortunately, not exactly. For some reason, Crash started from having extremely heavy momentum to no momentum, and now we're back to having momentum. In Crash 2, while letting go of the analog stick, he stops moving while jumping. In Crash 3, that's not the case. I have no idea why Naughty Dog went back to this, but even though the jumping feels noticeably worse, luckily it's not as floaty and stiff as Crash 1, and the level design actually feels built with this momentum in mind. But it's a definite downgrade from the smooth and responsive jumping from the previous game. They did improve the body slam though. He gets up a little quicker than he did before. That's nice. This is also the very first Crash game to have controller vibration, due to the DualShock being released around that time. There is some new stuff in this game though. Now in Crash 1, your moveset stays the same from start to finish, aside from a couple of vehicle levels of course. Crash 3 on the other hand is the first of quite a few games in the series to feature power-ups. Every time you defeat a boss fight, you get a brand new addition for Crash's moveset. Power-up 1 is the supercharged body slam, which is just an enhanced body slam that has a small shockwave that can break more boxes in one go. It's pretty fun to use around TNT and rather satisfying because of the vibration of the DualShock. Power-up 2 is the double jump. Great for height, but kinda crappy for distance. It works best when it's used with the next power-up and by far my favorite one to use. Power-up 3, the Death Tornado Spin. This is without a doubt the most game-breaking power-up in the whole, well, game. When combined with the double jump, you can get an insane amount of distance with it. It's ridiculously fun, especially in the time trials, which will be talked about later. Power-up 4 is the Fruit Bazooka. By holding down L2, you were able to aim with it. This is probably the weakest power-up out of the bunch, since it kind of breaks the pace of the game by having you stand still while aiming for an enemy. But there are still quite a few areas where it's not only useful, but even mandatory at times. Admittedly, it is also pretty fun in general to snipe enemies from a distance. The final power-up are the Speed Shoes. By holding down R2, these allow you to run really fast and are required for the time trials. Again, I will talk about them later. It's pretty fun to hold down R2 and go very fast though. The power-ups in Crash 3 are very cool in my opinion. I personally don't believe that they break the game as much as people say that they do, and if anything, it enhances the experience. It gives you a brand new way of playing with the Crash formula and makes this game quite fun. I will say this, they probably could have added more sections where the power-ups were actually put to the test, but I'm not too bothered by this. The last thing to mention with controls and abilities are all of the vehicle levels. This is where the divisiveness of this game comes into play. Crash 2 only had 3 vehicles, with 2 of them being the focus of the level. Crash 3, on the other hand, has a lot more vehicles. We have scuba diving, a tiger, a jet ski, motorcycle racing, a baby T-Rex, and shooting down blimps and planes in a plane in World War I and II.
Some Crash fans enjoy this, and others say that this makes the game unfocused. So where do I stand?
The vehicle levels, for what I found out, actually turn out to make half of the level count. I will wholeheartedly admit that this is definitely a little bit ridiculous, but I don't believe that this makes the game as unfocused as people say it is. I do think that it would have been better if they replaced some of the jet ski levels and motorbike levels with an extra platforming theme. I mean, come on, do we really need 4 of these jet ski and motorbike levels?
Despite this, I love the vehicle levels. I don't think they're all that needed, but the majority of them are a good change of pace.
I feel like they control really well, challenging, and well designed. The plane levels I'd say are my least favorite of the vehicle levels, given how slow that they are, along with Mad Bombers being my least favorite level in the whole game, but they're still pretty fun. My favorite vehicles to mess around with are the Tiger and the Jet Ski. The Tiger in general just controls really well, and the Jet Ski is really fun due to the wave physics, although there is a downside to that, which I'll talk about in a bit. The T-Rex is a nice way to change the flow of the prehistoric levels, and then we have the motorcycle. Oh, the motorcycle. These levels are continuously bashed by the Crash Bandicoot community, and I actually like them. I don't actually get why people hate these levels so much. I actually don't. They definitely do feel a tad slow, but all you have to do is slow down at the right time, try and keep your boost from the speed pads as long as possible, and be careful. That's all you have to do, just be careful. Don't go too fast or too slow. As long as you don't play it like any actual kart racer, you should be good. Just play ball with the control style.
Really, apart from the jumping, I honestly don't have many complaints so far. Let's move on to gameplay and see if the game continues to be this way.
Actually, the gameplay in Crash 3 is basically just Crash 2, but more. Mostly. It has the same amount of improvements from 2, with the bonus rounds, death routes, gems, gem pathways, including the
Ultimate Gem Marathon,
and crystal grabbing. However, there are a few tweaks that they did to the formula to try and make this the Crash Bandicoot experience. First and foremost, we actually have a box breaking tally in the menu instead of it being on the translucent box at the end of each level. Thank you! This is especially helpful for the bonus rounds. Collecting gems and crystals also feels way more satisfying thanks to the godly sound that they make when picked up. They also finally reduced the bouncy crates from 10 to 5. Thank fucking God. All of these improvements, while small, make Crash 3 feel even more fast-paced than the predecessor, and ultimately give it a slightly nicer flow. The only thing from Crash 2 that they poorly implemented in Crash 3 are the secrets. They're not bad, but there's way less of them, and unlike in Crash 2, these secrets don't feel subtle or smartly put in the environment to make players think outside the box, more just secrets that you can discover by accident. This isn't a huge loss, but it is still a shame. Hey guys, Editor Max Rabbit here. So, there is one thing with the gameplay that they added in Crash 3 that I forgot to mention. That being the switching crates, you know, they go from question mark to life to Aku Aku and back to regular that doesn't give you any Wumpa Fruit for shit. Yeah, I somehow managed to not remember that that was a thing introduced in Crash 3. I'm a massive fucking retard, can someone please shoot me in the head?
But I said that Crash 3 is mostly the same as Crash 2. That's because Crash Bandicoot 3 has one unique gameplay addition that ends up becoming a staple to the Crash Bandicoot franchise. The time trials.
This is where the running shoes come into play. Every time you beat a level and go back to it, there is a clock at the very beginning. Run into it and a timer starts and you have one objective. Reach to the end of the level as fast as possible. Along the way, a bunch of the level's crates are replaced with what are called time crates. They're yellow and either have a 1 or a 2 or a 3 on them. The numbers are how many seconds they stop the timer when you break them. The more you break, the more your timer stops. If you manage to get to the end of the level fast enough, you get one of 3 different tiers of relics. The easiest relic to get are the sapphires. They don't require any insane amount of skill to get, and the bare minimum for getting the completionist ending. The second tier is gold. They require a little bit more effort to get, but not too hard, and are the bare minimum to boost your percentage to 105%.
But then, the hardest and highest tier of relics. The fucking platinum relics.
If you want to challenge yourself with Crash, this is what you go for, and unlike the Sapphire and Gold, they aren't needed for completion. They are simply here to brag about, and I fucking love them for that. These are legitimately some of the best platforming challenges ever. Getting a Platinum Relic feels super good to do. Some are easier to get than others, but they are all still a blast to try and go after. Naughty Dog themselves even went as far as to challenge players to try and beat the dev times in each level, which can be seen in the 100% ending credit sequence. Out of pure curiosity, I looked up world records for this game's time trials, and yeah, people accepted this challenge alright. I personally have yet to have acquired all of the Platinum Relics in this game, but I will like to achieve that at some point. I personally just go after the Platinums that I know that I can do, and try to get others on levels that I rarely get them in. Nowadays, I'm able to complete the game with most of my relics being Platinum. My most proud moment during this playthrough was when I was able to get the Platinum Relic in Hog Ride on my very first try. Alright, technically it was in 2 tries, because the very first time I entered the level, I burned out, so then I immediately retried the race, but I'll take what I can get. And because I love bragging, I want to show you me doing it on my first try.
I know for a fact that one of my friends is gonna call me out for this.
The best part about the relics is that they are never really unfair. Sure, there might be a few trial and error parts. Okay, there is one thing I need to mention about the jet ski levels. Now, like I said in the vehicle segment, I really dig the water physics, but they do make getting the relics to be a bit of a game of chance half the time. There are these ramps to go over and have crates in front of them, which turn into time crates, and because of the wave physics, there is a 50-50% chance that you will completely go over or under the boxes. This is really frustrating every time it happens. That's all I could say. It's just bullshit every time it happens. Lastly, with gameplay, we have the enemies. This game seems to have the most enemy variety, ranging from knights to frogs to sharks to coffins with mummies in them to fat dudes to a goddamn triceratops, and how could we forget about the elusive
bomb?
The enemies are pretty cool in this game, even though there are no more enemies that require the slide to kill, so Crash 2 has stronger enemies mechanic-wise. Overall though, yeah, I love Crash 3's gameplay. They really did a good job with polishing up the formula to make it flow even better. It kept what was great about 2 and polished up the aspects that weren't great about it. Not to mention how fun the relics are to acquire. You can even put your initials onto the relic you got to either name it or express how you're feeling. As for the level design, it is just as, if not stronger than 2's, and Crash 2 already had brilliant level design. So the fact that they made it even better in the third one is absolutely mind-blowing. To start, we have the hub world. There is not much I can say about the Time Twister since it is just a more refined version of the Warp Room from Crash 2, and I already explained why I defend the progression style of the sequel, so I'm not gonna repeat myself. If you want, you can check out my Crash 2 video if you would like more detail on that, but for now, let's move on. The Time Twister does feel better to use than the Warp Room because of all of the areas, minus the secret one, are all on the same level. Meaning you no longer have to jump on a platform and wait for the next area to load. You could just go over there and it feels a little bit better. As for the level design itself, it's fantastic. There's more platforming themes than ever, and using time travel gives them the opportunity to have a truckload of different level themes. We've got medieval levels, Egyptian levels, prehistoric levels, future levels, and Arabian Nights like Arabian Days! More often than not, are hotter than hot in a lot of good ways! The level levels feel more dynamic this time around. Sure, there are a couple of levels from 2 that do this, but 3 does this a lot more often. Levels switch from Sonic's ass gameplay to side-scrolling to Indiana Jones and maybe back to Sonic's ass, and it's all done so well. Don't get me wrong, the level design in Crash 2 is sublime, but I believe that 3's beats it over by just a centimeter.
But you know how these games like to go, right? Everything is cool until we get to the boss fights, and I'm sure that this is no different. Wait, what? Crash 3's boss fights are actually good? Yeah!
I can confidently say that this is the very first Crash game ever made that doesn't have a single bad boss fight. They did it! The bastards finally fucking did it! Naughty Dog actually managed to improve the boss fights this time and not only make them good, but great. Boss 1 is Tiny Tiger. A great first boss fight that proves that a first boss fight doesn't need to be totally and utterly pathetic. He jumps around and him landing on the ground is what gives you a chance to attack. After that, he sends lions out into the Coliseum that take actual effort to dodge. Great start. Boss 2 is Dingodile. Another really good boss fight. I don't think it's as fantastic as people say it is, but it's still a really good fight. He shields himself with crystals, and fires into the air with his flamethrower, and flames come down and chase your every move. This is one of the very few times where the game really tests you with sliding in order to get away. Then he starts shooting his flamethrower at you and breaks his crystal barriers, allowing you to get to him and attack. Or you can just cheat and slide spin jump over the barriers and just hit him immediately. Cheater. Boss 3 is Dr. Nefarious Trophy. I'd say that this is probably my least favorite boss fight in the game, but it's still really good. You dodge lasers, entropy causes platforms to appear, allowing you to go over them and attack. This is the most repetitive one because of it only having 2 attacks that don't change all that much. Like I said though, this boss fight is still good, just not as good as Boss 4, Engine. This is probably my favorite Crash Bandicoot boss fight of all time. I mean that. And it doesn't even involve Crash. Engine's boss fight in 2 was pretty lame in my opinion. It's not bad, just a bit too slow and boring. Engine's boss fight in 3, on the other hand, I gotta tell you, he was not bluffing even slightly when he said this.
I've made a few modifications to my mechanics since our last encounter.
You certainly have. This boss fight is just 2 phases of non-stop thrilling action in a spaceship and fighting on the fucking moon. It's challenging, fast-paced, isn't bullshit, and controls really well. This boss fight is genuinely fantastic. There's nothing I would change about it. See you later, Engine.
Not again!
Final boss is of course Dr. Neo Cortex and Uka Uka, and oh man, what a perfect final boss. First off, Aku Aku cannot help you with the fight at all. That's because he is fighting Uka Uka. While they're fighting, you have to dodge them and also Cortex's lasers, and each phase has them attacking each other in a different way. After shooting at you, Cortex then throws mines, which breaks his shield and also an air vent. While Cortex is down, you have to spin him into the hole. This boss is just so thrilling from start to finish and is a ginormous improvement over whatever the hell this was.
Naughty Dog did it. They actually fucking did it. I never thought I'd see the day. Well, I knew I was gonna see the day because I've been playing these games for quite some time, but the point still remains.
What about graphics? Well, just like with a lot of the gameplay mechanics, a lot of the things that I can praise about the graphics I have already praised in Crash Bandicoot 2. Although, Crash Bandicoot 3 looks a little nicer than 2. There's more color and visual variety. Some of the models in both gameplay and especially cutscenes have a little bit more polish to them, the animation is a bit smoother, and not to mention that Crash 3 might have the best death animations in the series. They're a little bit more creative this time, and I fucking love the death animation from the fat guy swinging the chickens. But apart from that, yeah, it looks fairly similar to Crash 2, just a little nicer. Nothing more to see here. As for the soundtrack, it's the same kind of situation. Crash 2's soundtrack is great, and Crash 3's soundtrack is also great. 2's might be a bit better though, but 3's is still very enjoyable to listen to. Take it away, Joshua Mansell. That music was some good stuff. Let's move on. I know that sounds like I don't care, but that's because I really can't think of anything else to say.
So what exactly happens when you beat this game to not 100%, but 105%? Is it worth the trouble? Abso-fucking-lutely.
When you defeat Cortex and Uka Uka in the main game, Uka Uka says that they still have a chance to triumph. After getting the rest of the gems and relics, all of the other levels are locked out with you only having access to the final boss. If you manage to beat this game to 105%, you get the secret gem that ignites a bunch of fireworks.
Ah, sweet victory.
After doing the final boss fight again, you are rewarded with the final cutscene.
It cannot be! Not a prisoner of time again!
The time twister machine could not hold itself together. We were lucky to escape.
Give me the mask! With it I shall take over the world! Come on!
It is difficult to say what has happened to our enemies, but I doubt we will see them for a long time.
That is one of my favorite completionist endings of all fucking time. No other words. This ending cutscene is incredible. Plus, it also does a great job with giving us a potential ending to the Crash Bandicoot series, not just the original trilogy. Obviously, this was far from the last one, but this ending is still very funny and very satisfying. And that's really all that I can say about Crash Bandicoot 3. Warped!
I know what you're thinking. Which one do I prefer? 2 or 3? Well, while I will say that Crash 2 is objectively the better and more focused game, Crash 3 has always held a very special place in my heart. All of its truly fantastic qualities are enough for it to be my favorite game in the series.
Honestly, all I can complain about is having maybe too little amount of platforming, the floaty jumping, and the wave physics and the jet ski levels making the time trials a bit annoying. Apart from that, this game has a great story, fantastic level design, a good soundtrack, great boss battles, and very fun time trials. There's even a hidden Spyro 1 demo in the title screen, with Spyro 1 also featuring a Crash 3 demo. This is because Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games had a good partnership at that point. This game is in my top 10 favorite games of all time. Seriously. It may partly be because of biasness, with this being my very first PS1 game I've physically owned, but I don't care. On the scale of quality, I'm giving Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped a first time on Take It or Leave It a 10 out of 10. Take it.
That's the review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reviewing Naughty Dog's last game in the series, which will be reviewed next. This was Max Rabbit you just watched. See you on the other side.